Ladies and gentlemen, this is huge news. Durham probe judge rejects Sussman request to strike special counsel's factual background. Sussman's lawyers argue Durham's filing included prejudicial and false allegations. That's thrown out of court. The court case proceeds, the indictment proceeds, the charges will lead to a trial and almost certainly a conviction if there's no... And I would say it's virtually certain that Sussman gets convicted because the FBI and James Baker, the legal counsel at the Bureau, they've testified that this man lied. Now, hit subscribe to this channel right now. I wanted to do this segment earlier today. I found out about this last night, but this is really, really important. But I wanted to do the two segments on Trump's servers. Definitely check those out prior to this one. Sussman's lawyers argue Durham's filing included prejudicial and false allegations. That's not true at all. The federal judge presiding over the case of former Clinton campaign lawyer Michael Sussman rejected his motion to strike the factual ground section of special counsel John Durham's February filing. Sussman's legal team last month filed a motion demanding that the court strike portions of Durham's February 11th filing, including the factual background section, claiming it would taint the jury pool. Excuse me, that's all they've done with media for the past 5 to 6 years in hopes that they could get some kind of indictment on Trump. Do you think the jury pool wasn't tainted when, George Papadopoulos or Roger Stone or any of the people who were essentially Michael Flynn? Flynn and Papadopoulos were set up and framed. And they were set up and framed by people like Kleinsmith, who was eventually indicted himself, the attorney for the FBI, and Strzok, who was an agent who stated, "We'll stop Trump." Strzok was the person who interviewed Flynn. Do you think maybe the nonstop coverage, the hysteria and frenzy, the apoplectic reporting pertaining to Trump possibly being installed by Vladimir, and the worst possible scenario is taking place now in Europe, and yet still, it's really unbelievable. Media has turned this somehow into some kind of victory for mashed potato brains, our president. The greatest fears of Trump's administration are being realized during Biden's administration, and yet record high gas prices, oil prices, inflation through the roof, 0% economic growth. You have a country being invaded by the same country that was said to have installed Trump. So now you ask yourself that question. Who is really being installed, or who is compromised, or who's more inept and a friend to the Kremlin? Okay, so ask yourself that question. Why is all of this taking place under Biden? And why did they spend 5 years saying it would take place under Trump? Hit subscribe to this channel right now. I'll have a segment right before about 11 p.m. tonight Pacific, so be here in a couple of hours. But this is huge. Sussman wanted to basically, his team, his defense team wanted to say, well, you know what? All the accusations, everything we read today on this channel from the indictment, talking about the executive branch and servers being breached and infiltrated by people who just wanted to find a narrative for VIPs. It's in the factual background part of the indictment that is still there. That was factually accurate, according to the judge. Sussman's legal team last month filed a motion demanding the court strike portions of Durham's February 11th filing, including the factual background section, claiming it would taint a jury pool. I'm not going to strike anything from the record. U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia said Thursday during a status hearing, whatever effect the filing has already passed. The filing is accurate. James Baker of the FBI stated that the attorney paid by Clinton, Sussman, lied to him. Now, I actually agree with Sussman on this, or the defense. He didn't need a lie. Baker and everybody, a whole bunch of people at the Bureau, a number of people from Comey, Strzok, McCabe, Kleinsmith, Baker, they were all in on it too. They didn't like Trump. They either didn't like Trump and were in on it, or just, allowed everything to take place. The top people were in on it almost certainly. Actually, certainly they were. But here, Durham, in a February 11th filing with the factual background in question, alleged Sussman provided 2 U.S. government agencies with information from a tech executive that attempted to tie Donald Trump, who was a presidential candidate at the time, to Alpha Bank. The tech executive has since identified himself as, he's not named in the filing and has not been charged with a crime. That doesn't mean he didn't do anything that potentially could be criminal, or that down the line could be viewed as helping set up and frame Trump under 18 U.S. Code 371, which is what I write about in the Federalist. Durham alleged that Sussman and the tech executive exploited internet traffic about particular healthcare provider Trump Tower, Trump's Central Park West apartment building, and the executive office of the President of the United States while Trump, by the way, was in office. They still engaged in surveillance after 2017 while he was in office. So, in order to establish an inference and narrative tying Trump to Russia, of course they want this off the record. Well, the jury pool is tainted, because it is so obvious the attorney was paid by Clinton to undermine Trump. The reason Clinton doesn't pay money to third-party tech firms, or the DNC doesn't pay money to people for them to then side with Republicans. The whole point was to create, and that's why you have Danchenko, the Steele subsource, one of the subsources of the Steele dossier. These people are paid, whether it's the tech company that looked at DNC servers that never gave the servers to the U.S. government, only copies of the servers. We have no clue if those copies are accurate. Literally, most of the things you've heard, there are people saying that Trump withheld military assistance from President Zelensky. President Zelensky denies this. This is a fact, and it's well documented. They impeached Trump on an ellipsis, even though the president of the country he is said to have denied weaponry to, until they investigated Biden, refuted the allegations. The President Zelensky is I very much think that he's doing well. He's very heroic. I wish there was a peace deal, by the way, that could be brokered by the United States of America. It's interesting how Biden doesn't want to be part of any peace deal or negotiated settlement or solution or ceasefire. And you have a couple of other European countries. You have other countries in the Middle East working to perhaps find some negotiated settlement. But, that's another story. What better way to blame gas prices than to let this thing fester? It's interesting that Democrats, when you listen to, they're more concerned with, and that's why I don't actually say the names of the countries anymore, or I'm even more, I'm concerned with describing the situation now, because there's an emphasis again on curbing speech and information and opinion. The reality, though, is that for some reason, Democrats don't want this to end. We could focus on ending this with some kind of negotiated deal or settlement. I'm wondering why they don't emphasize that. That's interesting. They would rather sign a nuclear deal with a country known to fund groups that do heinous things than negotiate a deal, or actually buy oil from countries that are aligned with, Vladimir's country. So anyway, and let's put it this way: the anti-Russian hysteria is so despicable that's being perpetuated. Of course, it's wrong what Putin is doing. It's wrong. But the hysteria is the same thing we saw from you-know-what, and it's the same thing we saw with Trump and Facebook ads. The Democrats and media found in 2016, if they do not act in the most apoplectic manner, people start thinking for themselves. And they start asking questions. Gee, was Bernie Sanders cheated in the Democratic primary? That's interesting. Well, then why would they blame another country for informing us that Bernie Sanders was cheated? How many Facebook ads swung any results? And then they complain about Trump not accepting results. They blame Facebook ads and Twitter bots. Meanwhile, you have Hunter's laptop and incriminating data on the Clintons, the Bidens. I mean, it's endless. And they will only allow suspicion one way. They can't possibly look in the mirror. So Sussman's defense team wanted to basically throw out a big portion of this and throw this case out. But it's not going to be out. It's not going to be thrown out. Nothing's going to... In a separate motion, Durham argued there was no basis to strike any part of the filing and claims that his office intentionally... Okay, so nothing was politicized, but then again, you know what? Every indictment linked to the Mueller probe was more than just politicized. It was a frenzy, and nobody was ever indicted for working alongside a Russian intelligence official. That never, ever happened. However... Of course, you're going to have conservatives look at this, or people who just, want democracy to flourish, and they're going to say, wait, you know what? If you exploit internet traffic from a healthcare provider, Trump Tower, Trump Central Park West apartment, and the executive office of the President of the United States in order to establish an inference or narrative that's eventually quickly found to be false and misleading, the definition of information that is fake and phony and false and misinformation. That's apparently, his team wanted that struck out, deleted from the court filing. Well, the judge denied that. And obviously people are going to be upset. Obviously. The notion, the belief that people wouldn't be upset, that's bizarre. Of course, if you're spying on an incoming candidate, and you're doing so but after you're being paid by his direct political rival, that's a big problem. Anyway, huge victory for the Durham probe. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. The article will be below in the description.